Partner betrayal is disorienting, heartbreaking, and results in absolute confusion for the betrayed partner. You worry that nothing in your life was real, and you fear that you will never be able to trust your spouse or yourself again. Well, welcome to the Rebuilding Trust podcast with Carol the Coach. I'm Carol Jurgensen-Sheets, aka Carol the Coach, and what I can promise is that when you listen to my podcast, you'll begin to believe that there is hope. We will be hearing from experts all over the world who specialize in problematic sexual behavior, sex addiction, and infidelity. Together, we will be asking them the hard questions about how you both can rebuild safety, find strengths, grieve and mourn what you had, what you never had, and what you fear you will never find again. The truth is that rebuilding trust is possible, and I am going to show you the steps to working together to build a whole new marriage based on the honesty, authenticity, and transparency that your marriage deserves. Rebuilding Trust with Carol the Coach. Okay, welcome to Rebuilding Trust. To our listening audience, it's been another beautiful week, and I have such a special guest. I have Dr. Robert Hudson on, who has written a guide for couples on what is happening within the body, mind, and soul of an addict. And it's to help you navigate sexual betrayal and sexual addiction specifically. So, Dr. Robert Hudson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, yes, this is an amazing contribution, and I don't feel the couples have enough resources. You know, we are all pioneers in this field, and you must tell us what made you decide to write this guide.
So why I decided to write the guide is both personal and professional. I have been in recovery myself, and I would say, I've learned a lot along the way from addiction, betrayal, recovery. And during my practice over the last 2 decades, I have noticed that the couples come in and they often struggle because some of the male partners will focus specifically on their recovery, and the betrayed spouse often left feeling, where do I go? What do I do? And who is looking after us? So, and I feel that looking at the system is fundamentally important in terms of how we work with the couple. So that was initially what drove me to do this.
Well, that makes so much sense. And so you're obviously very partner sensitive, as well as you're sex addict sensitive.
Correct.
You want men with problematic sexual behaviors to understand themselves and to relationally work with his or her spouse to restore the relationship.
Correct.
Okay. So this new book, it's called Treating Compulsive Sexual Behavior and Its Impact on Relationships, a Clinical Guide, is instrumental in helping the couple navigate through this ordeal. And I call it an epidemic because it's happening to more and more and more couples.
Correct.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the guide. What can somebody get if they want to begin to work on their relationship?
So the guide, it's mainly for clinicians. And what I often say to people who said, well, if I don't want to read all the book, what do I do? So you will find at the back end of each chapter, there is a summary which summarizes the chapter. And then each chapter carry a workbook, and the workbook also is online, so you can download it if you so wish. And there's specific task work in all the workbook, in all the book itself, on how to sort of support the couple. And it's useful for supervision and for group work. So as a clinician, it's sort of have a reflective space for you to think about what you bring into the work, how you react to it, or how you might be triggered by it, or what comes up for you as a clinician. So it supports the couple, supports us supporting the couple. So that's what you can look for.
Because I find that, I'm just going to take this another step.
I find that many of the couples that I have worked with have previously worked with clinicians.
Right.
And unfortunately, clinicians haven't known how to work with couples, and
Right.
they actually do harm. So this guide really assists clinicians on how to work with a couple and do no harm.
Correct. I mean, just to go back to the harm element, I would strongly believe that no clinician set out intentionally to cause harm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I like to hold that view that I don't think that clinicians deliberately choose to do so. But what I
uh-huh,
try to do in my book, I try to combine theory with clinical practice, an
uh-huh.
integrative model, because one of the things I do know for sure for myself going through therapy and recovery and couples therapy, it's not one size that fits all. So,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, I offer sort of theory, clinical practice, and structured workbook interventions that is designed for therapists to work with individuals, couples, and groups impacted by compulsive sexual behavior.
And yet, what you said to me and what you wanted me to convey to the audience is that in actuality, this episode will offer insights for clinicians
Correct.
and recovering individuals and people in relationship to know what to look for in their therapy session.
Absolutely. Yes. And there are very
I,
clear guides in there for the clinician to use.
yes, and that's what I loved about this. I mean, this spoon feeds helping professionals on how to do this work.
Correct.
Yeah. Did you like the word spoon feeds?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Uh-huh. So, can I ask you initially, this is a tough field. And what's even tougher than working with addicts or
Hmm.
partners is working with the coupleship.
Correct.
What led you to specialize in compulsive problematic sexual behavior and then do that next level of work, which is the relational work?
Right. So I would say my interest developed both clinically and personally. And in my clinical work, I noticed how frequent secrecy, shame, intimacy
Mhm,
difficulties, and compulsive behavior were appearing within the couple's work. And yet I believe there seemed to be limited integrated understanding around the relational impact. And I suppose one of the things I observe at the same time as well, my own recovery journey, which was profoundly shaping how I understood these dynamics, both
mhm,
psychologically and relationally. And what I've done over time was to combine both my professional and personal experience that led me to specialize in this area.
mhm. I know, when I studied, and I got my CSAT in 2007,
Right.
and I realized I was in a room full of recovering sex addicts, mostly male,
Absolutely.
and I wasn't in recovery and I wasn't a partner. And I
Right.
said to Patrick Carnes, is this going to hurt me that I'm not in recovery? And he said, well, cancer doctors don't need to have cancer to know how to do the work.
It's very true.
And
Absolutely.
I know, although I agreed with him, I'm telling my listening audience now, I think if you've got a clinician who has done their own work around their recovery and has that separation to not project anything
Hmm.
onto the client, but also to have been there, done that. I personally believe, and I'm sorry, Dr. Carnes, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think that's an added benefit. And so, if I heard you correctly, your own work plus your choice to go into this field has given you an extra dose of empathy. And
Correct.
you've wanted to help clinicians and help couples get through this terrible ordeal.
Agreed.
Mhm.
I mean, I
Okay.
sometimes classify myself as the wounded healer, which I think we all are.
I love that. The wounded healer. And of course, when I think about that, I think about people that have worked with any kind of combat veterans. And we all know that this causes enough trauma that the brain doesn't know the difference between being in a personal war, AKA a situation where you've fought addiction or you've loved somebody who fought it, and a real war
Yes,
where you don't know what's safe and what isn't.
that's very true.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your definition of compulsive problematic sexual behavior, AKA sex addiction.
Right. So, one of the things I would like to propose or suggest is about we moving away from, the simplistic definition, which focus purely on frequency or types of behavior. And when I think about compulsive sexual behavior, I look at three specific areas. The
Mhm.
first is a loss of control, where you're doing more than you intend to, you waste more money than you had planned to, and where you continue the behavior despite the negative consequences. You're doing it knowing that you could be arrested, you could lose your job, you could lose access to your children, it could end your marriage, but you continue regardless. And where
Mm.
there's an impairment in functioning. And what becomes really important for me is understanding the function the behavior serves, both emotionally and psychologically. And what I've noticed and observed is quite often it's around regulation of shame, anxiety, loneliness, and emotional disconnection, and sometimes trauma. So,
Mhm.
so that's how I would define or look at compulsive sexual behavior.
Mhm. Well, can I ask you an even deeper question? And that is, you referenced earlier, um, I think you called it an intimacy disorder.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So, for our listening audience, again, that may be the first time they've heard that term. What do you define as an intimacy disorder? Or
So,
how is this an intimacy disorder?
right. So, an intimacy disorder for me is a failure to be intimate, a failure to form healthy attachment and closeness.
Mm. Okay, so it's not necessarily a failure to be sexual,
No,
although
because
we have
sexual often
seen,
they can do that. It's the
right.
intimacy element, allowing yourself to be seen by the other and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and allowing others to be vulnerable with you.
Mhm, mhm. And, that vulnerability creates closeness. And
Yes.
so if the vulnerability is there but not shared,
Yeah.
because we know for most men with problematic sexual behavior or women,
Hmm.
it is there, but it isn't shared.
Correct.
Um,
Or sometimes it's not there because they've brought up in systems which were chaotic and disorganized, and there are a lot of, I would say, neglect and abandonment early on that sometimes they haven't quite learned the skills of how to be intimate.
so how do you work with somebody who has problematic sexual behavior on that feature? Do you do it using yourself in the office or do you bring in the partner? How do you do that?
So normally, I don't use, in short, I don't use myself because in therapy, I don't necessarily disclose, and it may take a while for me to say to a client, I've been in recovery or I've been down this road. But this
Mhm.
is where I believe in the purpose of group and recovery community.
Mm,
Because in
mhm,
groups, and I run men intensive programs, it's where they learn to be honest, where they learn to communicate, where they learn to be intimate, as in emotionally intimate. And this is where they also practice this within the therapist space. And then they're able to take it home and do it with their partners.
You know, I hate to keep referencing him, but I did say to Dr. Carnes in the lunch line when I was
Mhm.
being trained, if there was one thing I could do for addicts, because at that point I didn't work with partners or couples. I was
Right.
just beginning to work with addicts. I said, if there's one thing that I could do, what would it be? And he said, start a group and do that immediately. One in which they can crosstalk,
Correct.
they can share feelings and their vulnerabilities. Because if they're doing it in group, you can help them to transfer that
Correct.
in their own lives.
Yes. So they
And
learn, they learn, and they learn with men.
right. And I did it immediately. And my bias and my misconception was, oh boy, they're going to miss groups. They're going to forget. They're not going to prioritize group. And actually, nothing could have been further from the
Right.
truth. When they come to group, I mean, where a woman may not come to group because she has a sick child, that addict was there because they knew it was a lifeline and they needed it. And
Correct.
nothing could stop them from coming to group.
That's very true.
Mm-hmm. So you must be very, very gratified to have run groups that were relational, where they formed attachments and where they could get what they never learned.
And that's a wonderful experience. And for me, that's where the growth is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So then, obviously, you defined intimacy disorder and you defined problematic sexual behavioral disorder. What impact do you believe that sexual behavior disorder has on partners?
So when I think about the impact on partner, I believe the impact on partner at times can be quite devastating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my many experience, what I would say resembles trauma, intrusive thoughts, and can be at times I've observed partners who are emotionally dysregulated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because one of the things partners often talk about is, a loss of safety and a collapse in trust. Who is this person? I do not recognize them or know who they are. Often the trauma is not only about the sexual behavior itself, but it's
Mm-hmm.
often about the lies, the secrecy, the deception, and the real collapse of a relational reality. And I've observed also partner frequently describe feeling destabilized rather than simply hurt. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
I would say the impact is and have been on partners.
Mm-hmm. Now, you have such a wisdom about that. I'm going to ask you two professional questions because there really are two institutes that train partner sensitivity. One
Hmm.
is APSATS
Hmm.
and one is ITAP with their CPIT
Right.
certification. Have you taken either?
No,
I didn't think so. I didn't see it in your bio and I didn't see
no,
it
I
in.
didn't. I didn't take it. Well, I didn't because I've done enough. I feel that I've done too many training now, and I need a break to integrate what I've learned before I
Uh-huh.
take on something else.
Well, I love that. And I can see that you have it. And I'm so pleased that you have it because you understand that safety and stabilization is the most important thing for a partner.
You're
And then
absolutely right.
they want to know that their husband or wife is learning the things they need to learn because in most cases they want to keep the relationship together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, one of the things also when I talk about partners, I reassure them when they come in that I will not rush them to
Mhm.
forgive. I will work at their pace. Because going back to your point, one of the things that couples often say to me, the partners, they feel pressured into accepting this, I'm sorry, and moving on. And I would
Mhm.
often say to couples sometime when they come in, I do not believe you're suitable at this stage to do couples work. What we need
Mhm.
to do is to offer safety and work within stabilizing both of you. And then once you're stable, then we can do the couples work. And I've observed that they're often relieved to hear that.
Mhm. Yeah, now I happen to do it differently because I do ERCM, the early recovery couples empathy model,
I
but
hear that.
I always have to make sure that the person with problematic sexual behavior has a wonderful individual therapist
Hmm.
who can really dive into that attachment issue, the trauma. They know how to create a sexual uh, abstinence plan for acting out.
Hmm.
And then what I do, I don't do couples therapy, but I do early recovery couples work so that we can
Right.
begin to find out what are the pieces that you both need that'll keep you safe as you wait for each other to grow
Hmm.
yourselves up or to go through this trauma. And, you said both people may be traumatized. And what
Yes,
I know is that when somebody comes out of the fog of addictive behavior, they are traumatized by what they've done
you're
to the
absolutely
other
right.
person.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, okay, now let me just tell my listening audience Dr. Robert Hudson wrote this amazing book, and it's really a guide to help clinicians to know how to work with a couple to promote safety and to move them forward and what areas need to be dealt with. And then he himself, you're in the UK, right?
I am. Yes.
Uh-huh. And you're an EMDR trauma therapist.
Yeah.
And I noticed that about all my peeps and ITAP is that they all had their EMDR certification. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to look into that. And I did. And I too am an EMDR trauma therapist. And then you're also a supervisor for
Yes.
CSATs.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you're this clinical supervisor. You call yourself a researcher, and your book is based on empirical data, is it
Yes.
not?
Yes, that's correct.
So tell us about some of the research that you've done in this field, because we're a fairly young field.
Mm.
Mhm.
So when I was doing my doctorate research, I did a professional doctorate, which meant I had to go out into the field and interview couples and get the data from them about how they've been impacted. So I would interview the couple together. I wouldn't interview the addicted partner and the betrayed spouse. I would interview them together and ask the same questions. So that's where I use what's called interpretative phenomenological analysis to
Wow.
interview the couples and to report the data basically. So that's where the research bit started.
Wow. And so did the research, I mean, in part, is this guide part of your dissertation based on the research?
It is, yes. The guide is
Oh,
from my doctoral dissertation.
if there's one thing that makes me want to go get my PhD is to create to create research that can change the world. And I do believe this book is going to change the world.
Thank you. Well, I would encourage you and invite you to do it.
Well, thank you. And if I do, I'll talk it over with you first.
And if I can be of any support, I'm here.
You know what? I know that about you. You're an amazing giving person, and you can already see the empathy flowing out of you. And empathy is my middle name. I always look for empathy in clinicians and coaches and all sorts of things. Now, you also reference in your book something that's near and dear to my heart because I see it in both the addict and the partner, and that is that incredible amount of shame
Mm,
that's there from childhood on up is part of the reason that addicts create maladaptive behaviors. And then it adds to all those layers of more self loathing and
mm,
shame, feelings of shame. So tell me
mhm.
what you've noticed and how do you work with addicts or in the coupleship when shame is so prevalent?
Yeah, in short, yes. So I think it was Pat Carnes actually who taught me that secret plus shame is the antidote to addiction. And where you have the
Mm.
secrecy and the shame, it's the perfect petri dish for the addiction to thrive. And what I say to men is that when they come into recovery and when you have no secrets and there is nothing to be ashamed of, then the addiction cannot thrive really. Because what I've sort of noticed is shame often becomes part of the maintaining addictive cycle itself. And many individuals move into compulsive behavior to regulate what I would say is a painful internal state, but afterwards experience intense shame and self-loathing, which then increases the secrecy, the isolation, the emotional dysregulation, and then ultimately they restart the cycle again. And a lot of the work I do is around helping clients move from shame towards accountability and reflection, which is a major part of the work. And that's where individual therapy, group work, couples work, and 12 steps supports them to do that along the way.
Okay, so I'm always creating graphics. And, I remember the graphic that we learned in ITAP
Mm-hmm.
about the sexual addiction cycle in general and the way
Absolutely.
ritualization.
Yes.
Yes. And so you just gave me a new graphic. Is it in your book?
It is in there, yes. But it's not actually new. It's just expanding on precisely what you've just talked about. So it's more of an
Okay.
expansion. It's nothing new, actually.
hmm Well, none of us really create anything new. We just build
E-
on the shoulders of our predecessors, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Oh,
Why reinvent the wheel?
right, exactly. So, okay, can you say that one more time? Because what I got was I was writing it down as you spoke. First of all, you said secrets plus shame is the antidote for sexual addiction.
Correct, correct. And I
And that,
suggested
oh, go ahead.
many individuals move into compulsive behavior, often to regulate an internal state. And it could be
Okay.
something which is good or something that's not so good. And most times it's around managing negative emotional state. But when they act out, afterwards, the intense shame and they experience intense shame and self-loathing, which then increases the secrecy, their isolation, and emotional dysregulation. Because most often they don't go home to their partner and said, I've just acted out. And ultimately, they sort of promise themselves to stop the behavior, never to do it again, thinking, oh, that was a close call. But because they're actually just stop the behavior and doing nothing about it, eventually they ultimately restart the cycle again. Something trigger them. And because they haven't learned how to tolerate these difficult emotions, or even just riding it and realizing that it will pass, the cycle repeats itself. So when working with this population, it's about helping the client move from shame towards accountability and being able to reflect, which I consider to be a major part of their recovery work.
Mm. And that's why shame work is so central
Absolutely.
to individual recovery, but also to the couple.
Yeah.
Because I am embarrassed to say, Dr. Robert, that when I had the first podcast on sex addiction in the world. I'm not
Oh,
embarrassed about that. But I
no,
had
don't
this
be.
I had this catchy little tagline, and it's the addict that carries the shame, but it's the partner that carries the pain.
Mm,
And when we know better, we do better. And one day it hit me, oh no, they both carry shame and pain. And for a partner, he or she is always wondering as they're moving through recovery, am I really doing the right thing?
mm.
Am I really showing my kids that I'm the proper role model for this?
Particularly when they
Um,
have older daughters, you see.
absolutely, absolutely. And so the shame that accompanies them, not only in the request for, am I settling?
Mhm.
Am I supposed to be here? And as you indicated earlier in the show, should I forgive? Do I need to forgive? I tell them, you don't have to forgive. That is your choice. That's really
Mm.
post traumatic growth.
Yeah.
And post traumatic growth is a choice. So
Absolutely.
don't put that burden on you. Just keep doing your work.
Hmm.
And if you don't want to forgive today, that may change tomorrow. But it usually occurs when the shame lessens in a partner.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, can I just add something there, Carl? Sometimes the shame is much actually deeper than that, because sometimes the addicted partner is actually doing things or acting out with people that are sometimes against their own values,
Mhm.
or and the partner itself cannot go to their friends or a close friend or even their parent to say, for example, my husband or wife is acting out with a transgender or with sex workers. Sometimes people have great difficulty
Mhm.
to disclose such personal information. So,
Mhm.
in a sense, the couple, once they discover that, is carrying that shame themselves because they feel shame about it.
Mhm. Well, and I actually created a chapter in two of my books on that
Right.
because I want them to know what shame they carry as a couple,
Yes.
but I also want them to know how they can move that shame and grow from the shame itself.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's a tough request, but it is possible. And that's called reframing when you take an obstacle and you say, how am I stronger? And what have I learned from it? And
Hmm.
how am I going to move differently in the world?
Absolutely.
Mhm. So, now, what do you hope most that clinicians and readers will take from your book?
What do I hope that they will?
Hmm.
I would like for clinicians, after reading the book, to come away with a more compassionate, trauma-informed, and for me, a relational understanding of compulsive sexual behavior. I also wanted the book to feel practical and something that therapists can take directly into the therapy room through assessment tools, cycle mapping, and workbook exercises, and structured interventions for individuals and couples. So that's what
Hmm.
I would like them to take.
So, I am going to ask our listeners to do two things: to ask their therapist, their clinician, be it a CSAT, an APSAT, a SASH. It matters not if they have expertise in this field and they really need that. I'm going to ask you to ask them if they've seen Dr. Robert Hudson's work, if they've read his Treating Compulsive Sexual Behavior and its Impact on Relationships, a clinical guide. And if the answer is no, you either buy the book for them or you suggest they get it so that they can go through these exercises with their coupleship and maybe not speed up the process, but go deeper
Mhm.
and not spin that wheel that so often happens in therapy when people don't know what else to do.
Mm, agreed.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yes. So I'm going to welcome everybody to take a look at this book. It's on Amazon, right?
It is. It is.
And you can go to Dr. Robert Hudson's website, which is www.relationship-recovery.co.uk. And then forward slash, right?
Yes.
I'm right. And he is on LinkedIn. You can find him there. And, we'll leave all that information in the show notes. So, Dr. Robert Hudson, it has been a pleasure to talk with you today.
Likewise, Carol. It's been a joy.
Um, okay. And I'll let you know when it drops so that you can share it with your clinicians
Thank
and we
you.
can put it on the listserv.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much.
Okay. Have a good
Thank you.
day.
You too. We'll talk again very soon.
All right. We'll talk
Bye.
soon.
Bye for now. Bye bye.
Bye.